Welcome to This Explainer. Today we are looking at something literally awe-inspiring. For the first time in over half a century, humans have finally broken the bonds of low Earth orbit to journey back to the moon. We're going to break down the blueprints of the historic Artemis II mission. We'll look at the stunning discoveries, the pretty harrowing flight plan, and honestly, what this monumental voyage means for the future of humanity. Let's get into it.
So, right off the bat, we have to ask the question that really sets the stage for everything else. Why are we going back? I mean, we went to the moon in the 1960s and 70s, right? So why spend billions of dollars to do it all over again? Well, the simple answer is that Artemis II isn't just a repeat of the Apollo missions. It's the dawn of a permanent lunar presence. We aren't just visiting this time around. We're actually learning how to stay.
For over 50 years, the very last words spoken on the lunar surface by Apollo 17 astronaut Gene Cernan, they kind of hung there like an unfulfilled promise. He said, "We leave as we come, and God willing, as we shall return." Artemis II is the bridge across that massive 50-year gap. It officially fulfills Cernan's hope and picks up the torch of human exploration exactly where Apollo left off.
Section 1. Introduction, Hook, and Mission Overview. This whole incredible journey kicked off on April 1st, 2026, when the massive Space Launch System lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center, carrying the Integrity spacecraft and its crew up into a totally clear Florida sky.
And the absolute heart of this mission? It's the crew. They brought an unprecedented level of diversity and international collaboration to deep space. We've got Commander Reed Wiseman flying alongside pilot Victor Glover, who's the first person of color on a lunar mission. Then there's mission specialist Christina Koch, the very first woman to make the journey, and she already holds a massive 328 days spaceflight record. Rounding it out is mission specialist Jeremy Hansen from the Canadian Space Agency, which marks the first time a non-American has traveled to the moon.
Now, you really have to appreciate the sheer scale of the hardware upgrades for this mission. It's staggering. The SLS rocket is an absolute behemoth. It generates 5.5 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. To put that in perspective, that's 15% more powerful than the legendary Saturn V rocket that took the Apollo astronauts to the moon. And the Orion capsule they rode in, it gives the crew about 60% more habitable space than the old Apollo command modules. It's a true modern deep space vessel.
Moving on to objectives and why now, the geopolitics and goals. Let's shift gears a bit and figure out what's actually driving this modern space race.
A major catalyst for our return to the moon is actually geopolitics. As it turns out, multiple nations are looking right at the lunar South Pole. Why? Because it has these deep, permanently shadowed craters that trap water ice. And in space, water means life support, and it can be broken down into rocket fuel. The US-led Artemis Accords represent a coalition of over 50 nations aiming for a transparent, sustainable presence there. Meanwhile, nations like China and Russia have signed independent treaties to build parallel exploration outposts at that exact same location. So the race to secure these resources is well and truly on.
All right, let's look at the milestones and timeline, the day-by-day highlights of this thrilling 10-day journey from liftoff to splashdown.
This totally elegant mission architecture proves they didn't just, point and shoot. Day 1 was all about hitting high Earth orbit to rigorously check the systems of that new Orion capsule. Day 2 is when they blasted out of Earth's gravity. Day 6 was the main event, swinging right around the far side of the moon. And by day 10, gravity had pulled them safely back for a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean.
The absolute make-or-break moment was the TLI burn on day 2, the translunar injection. This incredibly precise engine burn, which used the European service module, is what fully committed Orion to deep space. They fired the main engine, officially transitioned from an Earth orbit to a lunar trajectory, and, well, once that engine fired, there was zero turning back.
But the beauty of this flight path is the little something orbital mechanics call a free return trajectory. It's basically a brilliant built-in safety net. By angling the ship just right, the moon's gravity naturally slung them around the far side and threw them straight back toward Earth. So even if all the engines had completely failed after that initial TLI burn, gravity alone would have brought them home safely. Pretty amazing, right?
Of course, it's spaceflight, so things are going to get a little weird. Despite flying the most advanced spacecraft ever built, the crew faced some hilariously relatable hiccups. The suction fan on their fancy new space toilet failed, which forced them to use the much less glamorous contingency bags.
And in a twist that literally anyone who works in an office can appreciate, the crew members actually got locked out of their official Microsoft Outlook email accounts while halfway to the moon. Next up, our section on accomplishments, breaking records and capturing data. Because this crew really racked up some massive wins. 252,000 miles. Just let that sink in for a second. That is how far Artemis II traveled away from Earth. By hitting that staggering distance, the crew completely shattered the record for the farthest any human being has ever traveled from our home planet. That was a record previously held by the Apollo 13 crew for over half a century. And from way out there, they captured an absolutely breathtaking photo dubbed Hello World. Using a Nikon D5 camera with a wide-angle lens at 100,000 miles out, they took the first high-resolution digital image showing our entire globe in a single frame. Because of their totally unique position out in the void, the night side of the Earth in the photo is actually illuminated by light reflecting off the moon. It is just mind-boggling to look at.
Moving on to observations and crew experiences, the moon up close. Let's talk about what the astronauts actually witnessed with their own eyes from just 4,000 miles above the lunar surface. Pilot Victor Glover totally nailed the vibe when he said, "The Terminator is calling to me." And no, not the Arnold Schwarzenegger kind. He was talking about the Terminator line, that harsh, stark boundary between day and night on the moon. Looking down at it, the super low angle of the sun created this high contrast, revealing just endless, bottomless craters and towering mountain peaks that look entirely different than any satellite photo we've ever seen. What's really cool here is that we learned the human eye is still the ultimate scientific instrument. Digital sensors are great, but the crew actually saw distinct browns and faint greens on the surface. It's not just gray up there. They observed the intensely rugged geography of the far side, which totally lacks the dark volcanic plains we see from Earth. They even spotted 2 fresh craters, proposing to name them Integrity after their ship and Carol after Commander Wiseman's late wife. And to top it all off, from the far side of the moon, they witnessed an Earthset, an Earthrise, and a stunning 54-minute deep space solar eclipse. But even with all that profound lunar beauty right out the window, Commander Reed Wiseman had this incredibly poignant reflection. Looking back at our tiny blue marble, he said, "We do not leave Earth, we choose it." It's just a powerful reminder that going to the furthest reaches of deep space ultimately reinforces our deep connection and our responsibility to our home planet and to each other. Which brings us to learnings and implications, the path to Artemis III and beyond. What does this successful flyby actually mean for us?
First things first, it proved we can get humans back safely. The re-entry sequence was wild. The Orion capsule separated from the surface module and smashed into our atmosphere at Mach 32. That is 32 times the speed of sound. This generated a 5,000-degree plasma field and a highly tense 6-minute communication blackout. But Orion's massive heat shield held strong, leading to the parachutes deploying and a gentle 19-mile-per-hour splashdown off San Diego. The hardware absolutely works.
Scientifically, the visual data they brought back is a total game changer. It confirms that the future Artemis III mission, the one where we actually land on the moon, is going to be incredibly difficult. Unlike the flat, relatively smooth volcanic plains where Apollo landed, the South Pole Aitken Basin is highly dangerous. It's rugged and mountainous. But thanks to Artemis II, we now know exactly what we're dealing with.
And finally, our conclusion: humanity's multi-planetary future. Because Artemis II wasn't just a nostalgic trip. It was the essential first step out of low Earth orbit in half a century. The success of this flight paves the way for Artemis III, for a permanent lunar base, and eventually human footprints on the red dust of Mars. We've officially crossed the line into a new era. The time of humanity being confined to a single world is really coming to an end. So as we look up at the night sky tonight, I want to leave you with this. What part will you play in humanity's new era among the stars? Thanks so much for learning with us today. Keep looking up.